My name is Renee Ortiz, and the day my own mother tried to erase me in front of the board, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I stood up, slid my notes into a folder, and walked out of the conference room like my heart wasn't trying to claw its way out of my ribs. Because when a family decides you're not enough, they don't want a conversation. They want a disappearance. It happened on a rainy Monday in Raleigh, North Carolina, inside the glass-walled headquarters of TechNest Solutions, the software company my dad built, the company my brother bragged about, the company my mom treated like a stage set for her image. And I was the embarrassing prop. The boardroom smelled like espresso and printer toner, the kind of room where people said words like brand positioning and client perception while ignoring the humans who kept the servers alive at 2 a.m. My hoodie was still damp at the shoulders from walking in. I'd come straight from my car after dropping my daughter, Maya, at school, my hair still in a loose ponytail, my laptop bag pulling at my arm, my eyes gritty from a night of support tickets and broken sleep. I wasn't supposed to be here, technically. I wasn't leadership. I wasn't executive. I was night support, the person you only remembered when something was on fire. But I'd been invited to sit on the management advisory board, mostly because my father liked the optics of family involvement, and because I had offered, again and again, to help fix the things no one wanted to admit were broken. The chair at the end of the table was cold beneath my palms as I placed my folder down. My father, Daniel Ortiz, sat at the head, CEO posture, eyes on his tablet. My brother, Brody, leaned back in his chair like he owned the building already. And my mother, Sharon, sat 2 seats to my father's right, with her hair perfectly curled and her blazer pressed so sharply it looked like it could cut someone. She smiled at me the way you smile at a waitress you plan to undertip. I swallowed and opened my folder. I put together 2 proposals, I said, keeping my voice steady. One is a small coding scholarship for junior staff, entry-level devs, support engineers, people we keep losing because they burn out. The other is a recharge room, nothing fancy, converting Storage B into a quiet space with 2 cots, sound dampening, a few rules. We're asking people to pull all-nighters during crunch and... My mother's laugh was soft, practiced, like she was trying not to embarrass me while also making sure everyone noticed she could. A recharge room, she repeated, tasting the words. Renee, this isn't a summer camp. Across the table, our accountant, Elena Vega, adjusted her glasses without looking up. Dr. Rosa Ruiz, our employee wellness consultant, shifted in her seat. Colin Pierce from Sales Ops stared at the table like it had suddenly become fascinating. My brother's mouth twitched. I kept going. It's about retention. Our turnover costs are brutal. Replacing one developer can cost $50,000 when you include recruiting and ramp time. And after-hours outages... Brody leaned forward, elbows on the table. Can I just ask something? He said, bright and casual. Why do you think you're qualified to speak for the company at this level? I blinked once. Because I'm part of the company. He shook his head like I'd missed the point on purpose. No, I mean, look at you. You show up in a hoodie. You work night support from home. You handle tickets, that's fine. It's helpful. But you want to represent us in front of investors and enterprise clients? My mother's eyes sparkled with approval. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The old feeling. The childhood feeling. The one where you realize the game was decided before you entered the room. I'm not asking to be on stage at a gala, I said carefully. I'm asking that we treat our staff like human beings, so they don't keep quitting. My mother tapped a manicured nail against the table. We treat them well. We pay them. We overwork them, I corrected, before I could stop myself. That was the moment. My father finally lifted his eyes, not to defend me, but as if I had disrupted the agenda. Sharon's smile vanished so quickly it was almost impressive. She turned her body slightly toward the board, like she was turning toward a camera. "Renee," she said, voice sharpening, "you don't meet our standards. You never have." The room went very, very still. Not dramatic movie still, real life still. The kind where everyone's body knows something cruel is about to happen, and they're deciding whether to stop it or survive it. Brody stared at his hands, suddenly interested in his wedding ring. My father looked at his tablet again, and my mother pointed at my hoodie, as if fabric itself was my crime. "Someone with your image," she said, loud enough for every person in the room to hear, "doesn't represent our brand." There it was. Not your work, not your numbers, not your contribution. Your image. My throat tightened. For a second, I saw myself at 16, standing in our kitchen with a part-time job schedule in my hand, while my mother told me I was settling, and my brother laughed because he'd just gotten a summer internship through Dad's friend. I saw myself at 22, helping Brody debug a project the night before a competition while he slept, then watching him accept the award like he'd built the thing alone. I saw myself at 30, signing divorce papers and moving into a small townhouse near my daughter's school, telling myself stability mattered more than pride. And I saw myself now, in that boardroom, realizing stability in a family like mine always came with a price. I took a slow breath. Then my mother delivered the finishing blow, like she was placing a stamp on a document. "If you can't align with our standards," she said, "then you don't belong in leadership." Honestly, Daniel, I don't even understand why she's here. Brody finally looked up, and this time, he didn't smirk. He nodded. My jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. I forced my hands not to shake as I closed my folder. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "So that's what this is." Sharon tilted her head. "It's reality." I looked at my father. "Dad?" He didn't meet my eyes. He didn't say my name. He didn't say anything. And in that silence, something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not explosively, more like a thread finally breaking after years of being pulled. I stood up. The chair scraped softly against the floor. "I'm resigning from the board," I said. My mother's eyes widened, as if she hadn't expected me to have the audacity to leave on my own. Brody's eyebrows lifted like he was watching a show. Dr. Ruiz opened her mouth, then closed it. Elena's pen paused. My father finally looked up, and for a split second I saw something like panic. Not for me, for optics, for control. I nodded once, mostly to myself. Then I picked up my folder. As I turned to go, my mother said, sharp and cold, "Don't make this dramatic, Renee." I stopped with my hand on the doorframe and looked back at her. My voice stayed calm, which is the only reason I remember every word. "You already did," I said. "I'm just refusing to play my part." Then I left. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I walked down the hallway lined with framed photos of TechNest milestones. My father shaking hands with clients. My brother standing beside him like a prince. My mother smiling at events with champagne flutes in the background. And not a single photo that showed the people who kept the systems running. Not a single photo that showed the long nights. Not a single photo that showed me. Outside, the rain hit my face like cold needles. I sat in my car for a full minute with both hands on the steering wheel, breathing through the tightness in my chest. My phone buzzed once. A text from Brody. "Don't take it personally. Mom's just trying to protect the company." Protect. That word made me laugh out loud in my empty car, the sound harsh and surprising. Protect the company from what? A woman in a hoodie who actually knew where the bodies were buried? Every neglected server patch? Every deferred maintenance request? Every burned-out engineer quietly applying elsewhere? I drove home, picked Maya up from school, made her mac and cheese, listened to her tell me about a spelling test and a girl who had mean eyebrows, and smiled in all the right places. Because that's what moms do. They keep the world from collapsing for their kids, even when their own world is cracking underneath. That night, after Maya went to bed, I logged into the support queue like nothing had happened. Because at TechNest, you could resign from the board and still be expected to keep the company alive from your kitchen table. A client in Seattle had an outage. Another in Chicago couldn't authenticate users. A database in Atlanta was screaming. I handled it all. Quietly, competently, like I always had. And somewhere around 1:17 a.m., while I was waiting for a server reboot to complete, I opened my bank app. Not because I wanted to torture myself, not because I was planning anything dramatic, because I needed to remember something. I needed to remember that my life wasn't actually dependent on their approval. Years earlier, before Maya was even born, back when my marriage still looked fixable from the outside, I'd made a small investment. A stupid-sounding investment at the time. I'd put $500 into Bitcoin in 2013, after reading about it in a forum at work. I didn't tell anyone. Not my husband, not my family. It was my tiny secret in a life where I was always the dependable one and never the celebrated one. I forgot about it for long stretches. Then life got hard, and I remembered. Then life got harder, and I held on anyway. By the time my divorce finalized, that stupid 500 had quietly become something else. Not billionaire money, but freedom money. The kind of money that doesn't buy you happiness, it buys you choices. I stared at the number on the screen, the one that had grown quietly while my family told me my value depended on appearances, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not loud power, not flashy power. The kind of power that sits still and waits. I closed the app. Then I opened a contact I hadn't called in months. Wade Holden, a commercial real estate guy I'd met through a friend of a friend, the kind who didn't talk in inspirational quotes, just terms and timelines. I stared at his name for a full 10 seconds before I hit call. He picked up on the second ring. "Renee," he said, like he'd been expecting me. "You ready?" I swallowed. Outside my window, Raleigh was quiet. Streetlights reflected on wet pavement. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then stopped. Inside, my house smelled faintly like dish soap and Maya's strawberry shampoo. I could hear the hum of my refrigerator, the soft click of my laptop fan. Normal life. And yet my whole future was shifting. "I think so," I said. "Talk to me about that building again." Wade didn't hesitate. TechNest headquarters. 50-year-old brick. Deferred maintenance. Roof issues. HVAC. Server room leaks. Insurance risk. It's an asset with problems. I almost smiled. An asset with problems. That was my family in one sentence. What's the number? I asked. Appraisal's around 3.6 million, but they're under pressure, he said. If they need cash fast, if repairs start stacking, if staff turnover hits, you can get leverage. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. In the boardroom, my mother had pointed at my hoodie like it proved I didn't belong. She didn't know what I belonged to. She didn't know what I was capable of when I stopped trying to win her approval. And maybe, just maybe, she had never bothered to find out. I want to do it clean, I said. Nothing that points back to me. LLC, Wade said instantly. Delaware registration. Attorney-run purchase. No personal ties. I exhaled slowly. Okay. Okay, he repeated, and for the first time he sounded surprised. Renee, you sure? I glanced toward the hallway, toward Maya's room, toward the little nightlight that made her door glow faintly under the frame. I thought about the boardroom. I thought about my father's silence. I thought about Brody's nod. I thought about my mother saying I didn't meet standards. Then I thought about the women watching this story, women who work themselves raw, who keep families running, who get called selfish the first time they say no, who get treated like background labor until they stop showing up. And I felt that thread inside me, broken, yes, but also freeing. I'm sure, I said. Wade's voice shifted into business mode. Then here's what we do next. We start watching their pain points. Taxes, repairs, employee churn, cash reserves. When the moment hits, we make the offer. Fast, clean, cash. No contingencies. 30-day close. I closed my eyes for a second. This wasn't revenge the way movies did revenge. This wasn't screaming and throwing things and storming into a room with a dramatic soundtrack. This was quieter, more real, more dangerous. This was me taking control of the ground under their feet. Send me the details, I said. Wade paused. Renee, I gotta ask, why now? I opened my eyes and stared at my reflection in the dark window. Tired face, messy ponytail, hoodie still thrown over the chair like a badge of everything they hated. Because they finally made it clear, I said, voice low. They don't see me as family. They see me as labor. Wade didn't respond right away. Then he said, softly, all right, let's get you out of their grip. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, listening to the quiet. This wasn't just about a building. It was about the truth I'd been avoiding for years. If your family benefits from your exhaustion, they will call you ungrateful the second you stop. And the worst part? They'll genuinely believe it. The next morning, I went to work like normal. I logged into the system, I answered tickets, I joined the occasional staff update call. I kept my voice neutral, my face calm, my head down. I let them think I was defeated, because sometimes the safest thing you can do is let people underestimate you. And TechNest was starting to crack. Not all at once, in little, undeniable ways. A heavy rainstorm revealed a leak in the server room ceiling. They put tarps up like it was a temporary nuisance. An HVAC unit failed during a heat wave. Dev floor temperatures climbing into the high 80s. People complained. Sharon called it an opportunity to show resilience. 3 developers filed formal complaints to HR about unpaid overtime. North Carolina wage laws aren't a joke, and TechNest had been skirting them in the name of family business sacrifice. Then came the emergency meeting. I watched from my laptop as Sharon clicked through a slide deck. Her solution? A special assessment, $1,000 per employee, to cover repairs. She said it like it was obvious, like it was elegant, like it was strength. The chat exploded. One of our senior testers, Raul Vega, 15 years at TechNest, unmuted with a voice that shook, not from fear, but from rage. "That's half my monthly take-home," he said. "You're charging us for your neglect." Sharon smiled tight. "This is an investment in our future." Brody chimed in about sacrifice. Dad said almost nothing. And I sat there, silent, watching the company my family protected eat its own people alive. That night, Wade texted me one line: "Keep watching. The moment's coming." I stared at the message. Then I looked at the support queue lighting up again, and I realized something that made my stomach drop, not from fear, but from clarity. The boardroom humiliation was just the beginning. Because if TechNest kept bleeding like this, my father would panic, my brother would scramble, and my mother? My mother would do what she always did when her image was threatened. She would make it worse. I leaned back in my chair and whispered into the quiet kitchen, like I was making a promise to myself. "Okay, let's see how badly you want to pretend you're in control." And somewhere in the dark, inside that brick headquarters, water kept dripping into the ceiling tiles of the server room. Slow, steady, unavoidable, like a countdown no one could stop. For a while, nothing obvious happened. That was the dangerous part. From the outside, TechNest still looked like a respectable mid-sized software firm tucked into Raleigh's Research Triangle glow. The logo stayed polished. The LinkedIn posts kept coming. Smiling group shots from client lunches, buzzwords about innovation and family values, carefully cropped so you couldn't see the water stains creeping along the lobby ceiling. Inside, though, everything was shifting. And because I'd spent years working night support, the place where problems surface first, I could feel it before anyone said it out loud. I kept my routine steady. Maya up at 7, breakfast, school drop-off, a quick check-in with my manager, sleep when I could, night shifts starting at 8 when the real work began. That rhythm had saved me before, after my divorce. After my mom's passive-aggressive, "Are you sure you can manage on your own?" phone calls. After every family dinner where Brody's success stories took up all the oxygen in the room. Routine kept you sane when chaos tried to rewrite your story. At TechNest, chaos was whispering now. Tickets started coming in faster, not because clients were suddenly more demanding, but because infrastructure problems don't stay hidden forever. Servers that should have been replaced years ago were choking under load. Quick fixes stacked on top of old workarounds, and every temporary solution became permanent. At 2:36 a.m. one Tuesday, I handled an outage for a logistics client in Denver, authentication failures across 3 regions. I traced it back to a patch that never fully deployed because the update window had been cut short to save overtime costs. I fixed it. Of course I did. But as I typed the post-incident report, I added a line I knew no one in leadership would want to read. Root cause: deferred infrastructure maintenance and insufficient staffing coverage during critical update windows. I saved it anyway, because documentation is power. The next morning, during a company-wide update call, Sharon chirped about lean operations and weathering temporary challenges. Temporary. I muted myself and listened. Then the HR emails started. First, quiet ones. Requests for clarification. Questions about overtime classification. A developer in QA asking whether weekend hours would be compensated this quarter or rolled into PTO again. Then, louder ones. 3 formal grievances filed within 2 weeks. North Carolina labor law is clear about non-exempt overtime, and TechNest had been skating dangerously close to the edge for years under the excuse of being a family company. Family companies love that phrase. It lets them blur boundaries. It lets them call exploitation commitment. Sharon called an emergency virtual meeting. This time, I didn't sit at the advisory board table. I watched from the employee attendee list, camera off, name buried among dozens of others. She opened with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're facing some unexpected repair costs," she said, clicking to a slide titled Shared Responsibility Initiative. "To protect everyone's jobs, leadership has agreed on a temporary solution." That was when the $1,000 assessment hit the screen. I heard someone inhale sharply on the call. Another person cursed before remembering to mute. "This is a one-time contribution," Sharon continued smoothly. "An investment in our future." Raoul unmuted again. His voice was steadier this time, edged with something heavier. "Respectfully," he said, "this building's issues aren't new. We've been flagging them for years. Why are we paying for decisions we didn't make?" Brody jumped in fast, like he always did when things turned uncomfortable. "Everyone sacrifices in a family business," he said. "Dad built this from a garage. Sometimes you have to step up." I felt my jaw tighten. Funny how stepping up never meant leadership taking a pay cut. Dr. Ruiz tried to intervene. "There are studies showing financial stress reduces productivity." "We can't afford wellness experiments right now," Sharon cut in. "Not if we want to survive." Survive. The vote passed by the thinnest margin. Several abstentions. No one looked happy. After the call, my inbox flooded. Private messages, Slack pings, people venting quietly, cautiously, like they were afraid the walls were listening. One message stuck with me. "I love my job. I just can't afford to love it like this." That night, Wade called. "Pressure's building," he said without preamble. "Assessment's a bad look. Labor filings make lenders nervous." I stared at the spreadsheet open on my screen. Support metrics, outage frequency, churn risk. "How close are they to selling?" I asked. "Closer than they think," Wade replied. "Deferred maintenance plus staff unrest equals leverage." And Renee? Insurance just flagged the server room leaks as known issues, coverage denial risk. I closed my eyes briefly. The same roof that dripped water onto production servers was now dripping uncertainty into the balance sheet. "Let me know when it cracks," I said. He chuckled softly. "You won't miss it." At work, Brody cornered me in a hallway chat during a rare overlap between my night schedule and his day meetings. "This assessment is killing morale," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "But Mom won't budge. She thinks backing down looks weak." I nodded neutrally, like a good employee, like a supportive sister. "Communication might help," I said. "People just want to feel heard." Inside, I cataloged the moment. Brody knew it was wrong. He just didn't know how to stand up to her. Or maybe he did, and chose not to. That distinction matters. Weeks passed. Heavy rain flooded the lobby one Friday afternoon, soaking carpet just hours before a client demo. Sharon blamed the weather. Facilities blamed age. Insurance blamed prior negligence. The demo got postponed. So did a renewal. Turnover spiked, 15% in a month. People leaving quietly, professionally, with resignation emails that sounded polite and exhausted. Every exit interview was a mirror leadership refused to look into. Behind the scenes, Wade moved fast. Through a Delaware LLC with no obvious ties, we made our first offer. $1.8 million. All cash, no contingencies. 30-day close. The appraised value was double that, but appraisals don't fix roofs, and cash flow doesn't lie. TechNest's board panicked. I saw it in the tone of internal emails, the sudden urgency, the hastily scheduled meetings, the way Sharon stopped talking about soul and started talking about strategic flexibility. My father sounded tired, really tired. When the offer came back accepted, Wade texted only 2 words: "It's happening." I didn't celebrate. I made Maya dinner, helped with homework, read an extra bedtime story, because I knew the hardest part wasn't the acquisition. It was what came next. Thursday afternoon at exactly 4 p.m., I walked back into the TechNest headquarters for the first time since my resignation. The conference room door was half open, papers scattered across the table. Sharon was mid-signature when she looked up. Her pen froze. My father's went still. Brody stared like he'd seen a ghost. I placed a single folder in the center of the table. "Good afternoon," I said calmly. "The sale is complete." Silence. Real silence. The kind that lands heavy. I'm the new owner. My mother's face drained of color, and for the first time in my life, I watched control slip from her hands. But that moment, that reckoning, was only the midpoint. Because taking something back is one thing. Deciding what you do with it, that's where power shows its true shape. And that's where my family's story, and mine, finally split for good. No one spoke for several seconds. Not my mother, not my father, not Brody. The hum of the overhead lights suddenly felt loud, like the building itself was holding its breath. My mother was the first to recover. She always was. "This isn't funny," Sharon said, forcing a laugh that landed flat. "You don't have the authority to..." I slid the folder open and pushed it toward the center of the table. The deed was on top, recorded that morning, stamped, signed, irrevocable. Below it, the wire confirmation. Cash, clean, done. My father reached for the paper with a hand that looked steady until you noticed how white his knuckles were. He scanned the page slowly, the way a man does when he already knows the truth but isn't ready to accept it. "This says..." He stopped, swallowed, and started again. "This says the building is owned by Oakwell Holdings, LLC." "That's correct," I said. Brody leaned forward, eyes darting between us. "Who the hell is Oakwell?" I met his gaze for the first time since I'd walked in. "I am." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. My mother stood up so abruptly her chair scraped backward. "You did this on purpose," she said, voice trembling now. "This is retaliation." I didn't move. "This is business." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she didn't have a script ready. Dr. Ruiz finally spoke. "Renee, how long has this been in motion?" "Long enough to understand the risks," I said, "and long enough to structure it legally." Colin exhaled slowly. "So, what happens now?" I flipped to the next page in the folder. "The lease," I said. "TechNest retains full use of the building for $1 per year." Brody let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "$1? In exchange, I continued evenly. We convert the West Wing into a free coding and tech skills training center, open to all employees and their families. Certifications, upskilling, mentorship, no pay to play. Sharon shook her head. You can't impose the courtyard, I went on, cutting past her, will be repurposed into a small employee-run garden. Produce offsets cafeteria costs. Tax credits apply. The room shifted, not emotionally, strategically. I saw it in Elena Vega's eyes as she started running numbers in her head, in Colin's posture as he leaned back, considering how this would play in RFPs. In Dr. Ruiz's expression, something close to relief. This stabilizes the budget, Elena said quietly. The lease alone solves the repair shortfall. Colin nodded. Clients love community investment stories. Dr. Ruiz smiled openly now. Retention would improve, significantly. My mother turned toward my father, desperate. Daniel, you can't let her do this. It destroys the brand. My father cleared his throat. We need to vote on the lease terms. For a moment, Sharon looked like she might scream. Instead, she folded her arms, jaw tight, eyes burning holes into me. The vote was quick. Dr. Ruiz, yes. Elena, yes. Colin, yes. Brody hesitated. I watched him carefully. Years of rivalry, of quiet resentment, of inherited entitlement compressed into a single moment. He glanced at me, then at our mother, then down at the table. Yes, he said. My mother slammed her hand down. No! 4-1. The motion passed. Sharon gathered her bag with shaking hands. You'll regret this, she said, her voice cracking as she turned toward the door. Both of you. She left without looking back. My father followed, slower, his shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. The room emptied in stages until it was just me, the board members, and a stack of keys resting beside the folder. Colin shook his head, half amused, half stunned. Night support to landlord, he muttered. Didn't see that coming. Dr. Ruiz approached me gently. How did you manage this? I smiled faintly. I planned quietly. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Brody lingered near the door. For a second, I thought he might say something, an apology, maybe, or at least an acknowledgement. Instead, he just nodded once and left. I picked up the keys. They were heavier than I expected. Walking the building alone afterward felt surreal. The same hallways I'd passed through invisible for years now echoed under my footsteps. The server room smelled faintly of damp insulation, tarps still pulled back from emergency fixes. This place had nearly drowned itself in denial. And now, it was mine. Within weeks, the changes started. Repairs first. Roof, HVAC, server room. No patchwork, no shortcuts. Then the training center opened. 20 workstations, dual monitors, evening classes for night shift staff, weekend sessions for kids who'd grown up watching their parents debug code at the dinner table. Sign-ups filled within hours. The garden came next. Raised beds, tomatoes, herbs, lettuce, drip irrigation fed by rooftop runoff. People volunteered without being asked. Morale shifted almost immediately. Exit interviews stopped. Slack channels that used to hum with quiet resentment filled with project ideas instead. Revenue climbed. Outages dropped. Clients noticed. The assessment fee was reversed, credited back as bonuses. Brody cornered me in the parking lot one night after a late demo. I was wrong, he said. We let Mom drive everything. I kept walking. You let her. He swallowed. Can we talk? Too late, I said, unlocking my car. Behind me, Tech Nest glowed. Not like a monument, but like something alive again. 3 months later, the fallout hit my family hard. My mother sued me. Wake County Court, retaliatory acquisition, emotional distress. Discovery didn't go her way. Public repair bids, labor filings, emails documenting deferred maintenance, everything above board. The judge dismissed the case on summary judgment. Sharon was ordered to pay attorney fees. The same week, my father lost a flagship client over reputational risk. The dominoes fell quickly after that. Brody was demoted, salary cut, title stripped. My parents filed bankruptcy. Their house sold at auction. They moved into a small apartment outside Cary. No garage, no guest room, no gala invitations. I blocked their numbers. Not out of spite, out of peace. The training center expanded. The garden fed not just employees, but local shelters. Tech Nest became known for something real. And me? I still worked night support. Because power didn't change who I was. It just stopped other people from deciding who I was allowed to be. The strange thing about winning is that it doesn't feel loud. There was no moment where confetti fell from the ceiling, no triumphant music, no single day where everything suddenly felt fixed. What there was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in when chaos finally runs out of momentum. 6 months after the acquisition, Tech Nest barely resembled the company my parents had nearly sunk under the weight of appearances. The training center ran every evening now. Basic Python on Mondays, cloud deployment on Wednesdays, weekend workshops where kids sat next to their parents, building small apps and games, laughing when something broke and fixing it together. Maya insisted on going. The first time she walked into the center holding her little backpack, nervous but excited, something in my chest tightened. Mr. Raoul, who'd spent 15 years being overlooked, taught her how to write her first conditional statement. When her code finally worked, she looked up at me like she'd discovered fire. "Mom," she whispered, "I made it do what I wanted." I swallowed hard. So had I. The garden flourished, literally. Tomatoes climbed trellises. Basil spilled over raised beds. People took turns watering after shifts, not because it was required, but because it felt good to tend something that gave back. Cafeteria costs dropped. Wellness surveys showed stress levels down nearly 30%. Retention numbers hit records Tech Nest had never seen before. Revenue climbed, not from flashy deals, but from stability. Clients renewed because outages stopped, because teams stayed, because knowledge stopped walking out the door every quarter. Investors called, curious about the turnaround. I declined interviews, declined panels, declined keynote offers. I didn't need the spotlight anymore. I'd spent too long being burned by it. Brody adjusted to his new reality slowly. He showed up on time, did the work, sat beside junior developers half his age, debugging legacy code he used to pretend he was above. Once, during a late sprint, our shifts overlapped. We reviewed the same pull request from opposite sides of the room. He didn't look at me. Neither did I. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. They need to stay burned, so you remember not to walk that way again. My parents faded from my life the way people do when the world stops reinforcing their importance. No more gala photos, no more polished LinkedIn posts, no more visionary leadership captions. Just rent due on the first, utility bills, grocery lists. reality. The last I heard, my father took consulting gigs when he could get them. My mother tried freelance event planning, but clients were scarce when her old network evaporated. They never apologized. I never asked them to. Because closure doesn't come from hearing the words you deserved. It comes from no longer needing them. One evening, after Maya fell asleep on the couch with her homework still open, I sat alone in the kitchen and thought about how close I'd come to disappearing. If I'd argued in that boardroom, if I'd begged for understanding, if I'd tried to prove I was enough to people who benefited from me feeling small, I would have lost. Instead, I'd chosen patience over pride, structure over screaming. I didn't destroy my family's company. I saved it from the very people who thought image mattered more than humans. And in doing so, I saved myself. Here's what I learned, what I want every woman watching this to hear clearly. If you are working yourself to exhaustion for people who only value you when you're useful, that isn't loyalty. That's leverage. Their leverage. The moment you step back, they will call you selfish, ungrateful, difficult. Let them. Because the truth is this: financial independence doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Boundaries don't make you disloyal, they make relationships honest. And revenge? Real revenge isn't loud. It's building a life so solid that the people who tried to break you can't touch it anymore. Today, TechNest runs better than it ever has. My daughter believes she can build anything, and I go to sleep knowing my worth isn't up for debate. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly exploited, know this: you're not invisible. You're just early in your transformation. And when the moment comes to choose between shrinking and stepping away, choose yourself every time.